Welcome to EZY Switchgear podcast, and today I've got the privilege to have Dewald Pretorius with us. Dewald is from All Switchboard Solutions here in Pretoria, and they manufacture anything from low voltage boards, mini subs, and they've got quite a large range of products that they help and design and build. And we will give their links to the business down below, and you can also reach out to them and support them. And Dewald used to work in Madagascar, and I want to ask him some questions about that and see how that worked.
Yeah.
You went to Madagascar from which date? From
we left South Africa at the end of 2019.
Oh,
but I think it would be good to first maybe give you some lead to how we got there and why I went there and all those kind of things. So initially I had a medical business, importing medical equipment into South Africa, but always grew up on a farm, always knew about farming, all those things. And eventually in 2017, I sold the medical business to my business partner, and he in turn sold it again to a company called Adcock Medical.
wow,
Which is one of the larger medical schemes or medical businesses in South Africa.
manufacturing.
Yes, exactly. So they bought out our rehabilitation, physiotherapy, biokinetics, chiropractic section that we had. They bought that out. But in the meantime, between 2017 and 2019, I started a boeremark in Moreleta Park. And whilst doing that, I also started another medical business where we did exoskeletons. Exoskeletons would help your paraplegic, quadriplegic, some quadriplegics depending on the grip ability. We also started that. And this is how I met Dwayne van Sale, who we are now working together at All Switchboards. We left for Leipzig, and I was looking for new rehabilitation products in Leipzig. One of them was the exoskeletons, and that's how we found each other in Leipzig, living only 4 or 5 kilometers apart. For most of our time, and then we end up meeting in Leipzig in Germany. Yeah. So and then my stepbrothers, what they did was they saw an opportunity in Madagascar for farming. So they approached one of the largest. Well, it is the largest milling agency. So in Madagascar, they do feed. It's a feed mill. So feed for animals, especially chicken. It's quite an interesting, and don't keep me on the exact facts, but as I know, in Madagascar, the average person or per capita in Madagascar only consumes about 2.5 chickens per year.
Yo.
So they're
very light on what
very light on protein, but however, there is still a massive business to feed the chickens because it's a growing industry. But they've got over 30 million people.
Yes.
So that's one of the largest supply chains that we had was with maize. So they've got a huge shortage on maize. They are rice-eating staple food people. However, the animals still need the...
What do they produce on the island themselves? What is are they a net importer or?
Yeah, so no, Madagascar is... They're not yet... they're not self-sustaining, to put it that way. There are... No GMO products are allowed in Madagascar, so everything is very naturally grown. But one of the biggest trademarks is vanilla. So they are the largest producer of vanilla in the world. So they produce about 70 to 75% of the world's vanilla.
Wow, from one island. That's incredible.
And the island is quite a big island. I think it's a 4,400 kilometer coastline.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't really know where Madagascar even is, and if you speak to them, they especially in South Africa, they want to compare it to Mauritius, which is a dot in the ocean.
Yeah, if you zoom out, you can not even see Mauritius, but you will see Madagascar.
Yeah, you'll see Madagascar, exactly. So I always try and explain that Madagascar is probably as large as Namibia.
Yeah. That's very comparable.
Yeah, so it's more or less that size, so that people can understand. Only that has 30 million people. But a beautiful country, but very tough to live in. Living circumstances. There's no government grants to the local people. Everybody is self-sustaining. If you walk to a Malagasy person and you ask him, how much rice do you need he will tell you by the kilogram per year how much rice he needs for him and his family to survive.
Wow.
So every single one of them are planting their own rice, has their own 2.5 chickens per person, sometimes a little bit of poultry or pork. So their protein values are very low, and I always say to people, they say, but why is the meats in Madagascar so tough? And I try and explain to them, because there's no process through the meat.
Yeah.
How do you keep food fresh? You keep it alive. So what you kill today is what you eat tonight. It's that kind of situation. So villages would share a zebu, which is cattle. They would share it in the more rural areas. They'll say, okay, this week we will take one of your zebu, and that zebu would be slaughtered, and the whole village would benefit from that zebu.
Wow.
So that's how they keep their meat fresh and
Very
share
interesting. So
around.
then the power grid is also very unstable.
Very
there?
much so, yeah.
And it's more diesel generation, or
Yeah,
do they
it's called Girama, is their ESCOM, if you want to call it that, and it's all diesel generated electricity. They are starting to move into contracts for solar, wind. One of our South African family of ours, or turned into family. My brother married his sister, and he's a South African. They assist with large solar energy, and it's especially for the I think it's a cobalt mine, if I'm not mistaken. So that's down in the south of Madagascar in an area called Fordorfen. But there's definitely a change into solar, and more people are aware. A lot of the locals already use solar electricity there, but I do see that as being the future for Madagascar, because they would not be able, with the growing economy that they do have, be able to sustain it from the grid.
generation, yeah.
And,
Petrol generation is very expensive, and the fault levels are not high enough. So any fault on the grid affects the grid.
Exactly.
It is quite. I've been to Seychelles, and I saw they are so sensitive. Their tripping currents are so low and so fast. They would rather have nuisance trips on your side than affect the grid. Obviously.
I mean, just to give you an idea for the layman's terms, every person, if you go and buy a television in Madagascar, your television is they're not guaranteed if you don't have a stabilizer connected to it.
Voltage stabilizer.
Yeah, voltage stabilizer. When you walk into South Africa and you ask for a voltage stabilizer, nobody knows what it is.
Yeah.
So that was interesting for me there. Just about those general things. One of the things that's close to the heart for me is that we often are the kind of people that want to complain about anything that's wrong in South Africa. And if you've lived in Madagascar, you soon realize how little we have to complain about by living here. Because I mean, those people are walking around with smiles all day. The potholes and the roads and is not even a consideration in their terminology, if you want to put it that far.
What?
It's we all know that the roads are bad there and everything, but people live around it, so it's and then when you come back to here and you're driving 120 kilometers down a highway, you just realize how much further South Africa has come in comparison to most of the African countries.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, so I sometimes feel that we still need to, the grass looks greener on the other side, but it's not necessarily the fact.
Yeah. And so you went over there, you started this farming business, and how did that pan out?
So how we came about is, so in Madagascar there's very little skill levels, especially when it comes to farming, when it comes to building, when it comes to all these things that we take for granted, even plumbing or electricity, anything like that. The people still use very old techniques over there. I often say to people that in Madagascar, you should place yourself 50 or 60 years back when you're sitting in South Africa on the way we do things. And I think it's made us a bit lazy in South Africa on how you approach things, because everything's so achievable around the corner. But that's why we went to Madagascar, is because the skill of a farmer was needed. Yes. Especially commercial farming. There's not a lot of commercial, there's almost no commercial farming in Madagascar.
Okay.
So the people, however, are great farmers themselves, but they sustain themselves only.
Yeah, they don't grow more than what they need.
They don't grow more than what they need. But even that said, they still they plant the most amazing rice paddies, and the rice quality in Madagascar is fantastic. Some of the Chinese come over and they'll actually swap out rice for the quality of the Madagascar rice. Give them, as an example, 2 bags for 1 bag back because of the quality of the rice.
Wow.
So it's not something I can necessarily taste.
Then they
because
use it as seed, obviously, for their rice plantations.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So I think they want, because it's such old cultivars.
Yes.
Stable
cultivars.
It's very stable. So they want those, even though the yield potential is less. It's still the quality of the rice itself.
It's a strong plant.
Yeah, it's like, we are like that about meat.
Yeah.
They that way about rice, and they can actually taste the different kinds of rice in the little markets or on the sides of the road. You can have 5 different containers with rice in it, and you can pick from them all with a slightly different price range. It's just an interesting way of.
How's the cost of living there?
So if you do live, so the benefit for farmers that we had was you don't have the middlemen, so the cost of living is very similar to here in cost of food. And when we got there initially, it was a little bit less expensive, but it has actually gone up as the quality improved in the last 6 years that I've been there. So I would say your cost of living when it comes to food and those kind of things is very similar.
Okay.
Rent, much less expensive in Madagascar. Accessibility, you don't have a small car in Madagascar. You'd rather have something like a 4x4 to get around. If you are, if you're of the middle class, you would definitely need that to get around. And
so we did a solar plant fix of a switchgear there, and it took the technician from the airport to the site, which is about 100 kilometers away, 4 hours of driving.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So you've got your 4 main roads in Madagascar: north, south, east, and west. So and those 4 roads are tarmacs, if you want to call it that, but it's single lanes, one direction and the other. Very difficult. If you move off those roads where most of the projects are, I mean, our main farm is quite central in Madagascar, and another contract that we did in the west of Madagascar, which was at an area called Maintiranu, that's 400 kilometers apart. The 400 kilometers in the December season of rain season took us 17 days.
Oh my goodness.
To get to the 400 kilometers.
That's
in the winter, you can do it in 3 or so days. When it's not raining.
So when it's good conditions, you can do it in 3 days.
Yeah, when it's good conditions, you can do it in 3 days.
Sure. Wow. And, yes. See, what a privilege, eh? To have roads.
So that's exactly what I said is that it is incredible that we could still. I think sometimes we just need to appreciate what we've got already.
Yeah. Just stop and smell the roses.
Yeah, true.
Great. So now tell me a little bit about All Switchboard Solutions.
Yeah. So All Switchboards. So as I said in the beginning of the interview, and after all of this happening in Madagascar, I've got 3 boys and my wife that's been living there with us for the last 6 years. And I knew Dwayne from before. So I started making contact with Dwayne as the family started requesting we need some social life now with friends and sports and for the kids. And so it was more a family decision to return. My 2 stepbrothers are still there. My one brother does have a son who's now, I think, 10 years old. And so they've still got some time there. And we've just had a fantastic, we've built an island there in Madagascar. Coming back now to South Africa and working with Dwayne has also been a privilege for me, and they've been really good to us as we just helped us ease into the new system here. All Switchboards itself, fantastic company, was born out of the need for these enclosures that we built most of. We are also really open to new business and new ideas. We've just recently moved in some areas of a little bit of furniture here and there to fill the gaps and the needs during the year. As we all know that what I've realized in the short period that I've been there is that your first quarter of the year is mostly a slow quarter, I think, for most of the people. And directly after the new financial year ends, that's when things really pick up in this. So I've gone in mostly with the intention to assist with setting up new systems for all switchboards. That gives us better lead times. It helps us get to our demands.
As well as cost
management, stock management. These things are all really important things, especially in a business that busy, where there's so many of the little things that count that goes into these things. You know,
of course, yes.
You would know yourself how much copper and wire and things goes into these boards, and how do you calculate that? You're not just selling a can of Coke.
Yeah.
You're selling a lot of items inside.
And if you are too rough, you can either undercut yourself, or you can your price can be too high, and then you price yourself out of the market.
Exactly. So I think that's where you need to find a position where you are constant in your quoting system. It's really easy to get the deal if you're so much cheaper than the rest,
course, yes.
and it's really hard when you're more expensive.
Yeah.
So you need to find a good way to quote, especially in this kind of field of business.
What single business lesson have you learned from your first ventures up to now that you can tell a young entrepreneur, look at this is very important?
Well, I still believe in service level. If there's one thing that's always been is service level, and returning to your customer, whether it doesn't matter whether it's corporate or individuals, just getting back with information, making sure that the people you work with know that you know about them. I think that's always been our success, is that the way we've returned the information in every business venture that I've been before.
Closing the loop.
Exactly.
Good communication.
And, not just, I always call it slap in the face sales. It's the people who jump on and say, can you give me something?
Yeah.
But looking for business, looking for new opportunities, and staying ahead of the game, whatever field you find yourself in.
So sales and service.
Sales and service. And then I've learned recently, not recently, but I've, there's a lot of vanity when it comes to sales, because sales always thinks that that's the only thing. It is one of the most important things in a business, but there's also the backdrop of the business that's really important to maintain, because there's no point in having hundreds and thousands of rands of sales but making no profit at the end of the day. So the backdrop is as important.
Yeah, but systems, very important.
Yeah.
A system makes a big difference in a business. How did you learn about systems? What was that?
Well, the first way I learned about systems was my first job I had after my father passed away of malaria. I was a farmer coming out of school, and then I went to Tux University for continuing education with a diploma in business management. But the first place that I learned was my first job. I was acting as a storeman in a company called CopyClear. And they were so accurate because they had such a small profit margin that they didn't have the opportunity to even lose one item.
Yeah.
And in that time, I learned everything there is, especially on a platform called Pastel and Sage. I learned that system, and that taught me the most I knew about business, how a business works, what's a credit note, what's a debit note, all these kind of things. Exactly, and what goes where. So I think that was probably my best learning curve, is to learn about how a business works inside, and how to maintain every single cost within that business. That's been my success all over, and I've taken that right through my whole life. That first job that I had as a storeman at a consumable company that sold computer printer consumables and these kind of things. So.
Dewald, thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing with us. Please like and subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions for us, please put it below. We always answer the questions. And thank you for coming.